filling in. Okay, so this is Doug. This is my first webinar. I hope everyone can hear me. We're not having any problems. I'm very, very excited to be part of this webinar today. There's huge interest in this field, which is great for dietitians to embrace this practice to enhance their practice. I am the co-chair of the Integrative Functional Network along with Desiree Nielsen, and we're very happy to have Kathy Swift and Sheila Dean to present today. So rather than wasting time, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, who will introduce Sheila, and I think we're good to go. So I guess take it away, Kathy.
Well, thank you, Doug, and welcome, curious minds out there. We are so excited that you're joining us today because learning and integrating functional nutrition into your practice, it really is life and career changing in so many ways. I know it was for me and continues to be, and really excited as the co-founder of the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy. I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Sheila Dean, a registered and licensed dietitian nutritionist, board-certified clinical nutritionist, and certified diabetes educator. Sheila is the owner of Palm Harbor Center for Health and Healing, an integrative and functional medicine-based practice in Palm Harbor, Florida. Sheila is a published author, national speaker, media spokesperson, and has taught nutrition science for over 19 years as adjunct professor at the University of Tampa, University of South Florida, Morzani School of Medicine, Maryland University of Integrative Health, Schiller International University, Saybrook University, and St. Petersburg College. Well, Dr. Dean is also the co-founder of the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, or IFNA, as we like to say, which is a comprehensive online training and mentoring program that we've designed to transform the practice of nutrition by using the most effective integrative and functional nutrition clinical tools and treatment protocols. And so I just want to mention, and even this morning on our IFNA listserv, someone wrote in about, are there any protocols? So we will be sharing many of these things in our training program. But before I turn it over to Dr. Dean, I just want to mention a few logistics. For the best audio quality, everyone in the audience is muted. We know you're out there. We're glad you're here, but for audio quality, you are muted. But that said, we encourage and value your participation. So please post your questions or your comments as they come up. You can type them in anytime during the presentation using your webinar panel. And we'll have time at the end of Dr. Dean's presentation for a brief Q&A, question and answer, and Doug will be moderating that. So without any further delay, let's get started. I'm really excited about this presentation, and please welcome Dr. Sheila Dean.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for that introduction. I am really excited and honored to be with all of you here today. And my goal for this afternoon is to share with you in a simple but clear way what integrative and functional nutrition is essentially about, what makes it so unique, so important, and why I personally could never really go back to any other approach. I'd like to first start by sharing a short story with you about my journey. Around the year 2000, I was a conventionally trained dietitian and certified diabetes educator working at the Joslin Diabetes Center. And as an educator and nutrition counselor, I worked in conjunction with an endocrinologist to support our patients with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, managing their symptoms. It was pretty traditional work within the limits of the standards of care at that time, and I did have a small private practice on the side using my common and conventional tools in my toolkit at the time. Tools like carb counting and food exchanges, calorie counts, reduced fat diets, and those sorts of things. And one day I was just sort of lamenting at how unfulfilling I felt my career was for me and my my sort of sense of dissatisfaction. It was that lack of satisfaction with my career was just very palpable. I remember asking myself, is this really all there is? Did I go through all of this work? You know, it took me 5 years to do my undergraduate training, my clinical internship, passing the national board exams, to kind of come up with this fairly simple meal plans, because if that was really all there was to the field, I was moving on. I was seriously contemplating a career change. But around the same time, I began to hear rumblings of this relatively new term, functional medicine, when a dear friend and a fellow RD made me aware of these various functional medicine courses and conferences. You know, so at the time, the cost was pretty staggering for me, but I took a leap of faith, and in September of 2001, I began my new educational process, and truly it transformed my entire practice and career. I felt like a whole new world was opening up to me regarding these scientifically supported methods that was just music to my ears for really preventing and healing patients with chronic disease, as opposed to just managing their symptoms. All of a sudden, all these cases were coming my way with these conditions that normally I wouldn't have known how to handle otherwise, and they were suddenly turning into these success stories. You know, people with stomach and intestinal problems and brain fog and fibromyalgia, and people with multiple autoimmune diseases, thyroid conditions, hormone imbalances. And you know, the more I implemented the tools that I was learning as a functional medicine dietitian, the more I found myself actually healing my patients. And you know, I think there was a time where I was afraid of using that term heal, or even, dare I say, cure. But once I saw the power of functional nutrition in action, I just knew I needed to learn as much as I could. I knew I needed to get the right training. And now, of course, getting the word out to as many nutrition professionals is our goal. So as you can imagine, my career was just immediately reinvigorated with all this wonderful, amazing new information, these new realms of understanding, and this ability to truly help my patients that just set me on this course of lifelong learning using an evidence-based systems biology approach, with really nutrition being this central focus for treatment and cure. And so ultimately I could see my practice becoming completely transformed and infused with this new sense of energy. So if there is someone out there, anyone out there in the audience this afternoon that's feeling disillusioned like I was about being a dietitian, or maybe you just want to expand your horizons and just learn about this new approach to your patient cases from a functional nutrition approach, I want to invite you to come along with us on this wonderful journey to really transform your practice and really your career. So the session objectives for today, really my goal is we're going to talk a little bit about describing what makes the integrative and functional nutrition approach unique. We're going to identify some assessment tools for the integrative and functional nutrition practitioner, and really there are quite a few, but we'll only talk about a few today. We'll talk about using the integrative and functional nutrition approach for clinical decision making.
Sheila?
Yes. Hello?
Can you provide a comment on when you want to answer questions? There are some hands raised.
Yes, we're actually going to take questions at the very end of the session. And so also one of my objectives is really to talk about why you might want to choose the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy as a way to gain some training. So I want to start by bringing to your attention a special report that was published 10 years ago now in the New England Journal of Medicine on the decline in life expectancy in the U.S. in the 21st century. So as you can see, the authors write, the trend in the life expectancy of humans during the past 1,000 years has been characterized by a slow, steady increase. unless effective population-level interventions to reduce obesity and chronic disease associated with it are developed, the steady rise in life expectancy observed in the modern era may soon come to an end. And this is really the part that kind of stunned me. And the youth of today may, on average, live less healthy and possibly even shorter lives than their parents. So let me say that again. The youth of today are expected to live shorter lives than their parents based on the trends and the data that we're seeing. That's really profound. We definitely have our work cut out for us. I also recently read that it was reported that by 2020, worldwide deaths from chronic disease are projected to total more than twice the number of deaths from infectious disease, something like 50 million versus 20 million. So we really have to find ways to get people truly healthy, not just control their symptoms. So I want to just sort of tease out a few important concepts. I would like to clarify the difference between the acute care model versus the chronic disease model, but I think in order to understand nutrition today, we really have to understand the state of medicine today. Of course, I want to pay homage. I think we need to pay homage to the training that healthcare professionals receive in acute care medicine, ER medicine, urgent care medicine. I mean, naturally, one of the greatest accomplishments of mankind is acute care medicine. You know, you can take someone who's having a heart attack or having an acute asthma attack and save their life because you're going to stabilize that patient, you're going to lock down their physiology to keep them alive, right? Because acute care medicine is about crisis management and it has to be expeditious. But what happens when you try to use the acute care model to problems that are chronic in nature, right? What happens is you start to feel like you're trying to, like that picture that you're looking at, fit a square peg in a round hole. And what ends up happening is we rush to diagnosis to name the disease. We all know that, you know, patients are immediately put on medication. That certainly medication is not the last resort. If anything, it's first-line therapy most of the time. We certainly, patients are rushed to surgery, right? People are constantly getting body parts snipped out very easily. I mean, you know, you can have a complaint and, oh, it's got to be the gallbladder. Take that gallbladder out, you know, taking their thyroid out, taking parts of their intestines out before we really get a chance to address their health challenges from a functional nutrition perspective. There's a problem with patients where they're getting their numbers treated, but they're not really being listened to. These patients are getting cut up into segments, and so these patients are not being seen in the wholeness of who they are. So for example, that patient where, you know, perhaps the endocrinologist is really just looking at that A1C but isn't really listening to the patient's story. They're not really even concerned. It's all about that A1C, right? Or the patient that walks in and their TSH is normal, but the patient is saying, you know, I don't feel good, right? Or that patient where the LDL cholesterol is off, but the entire picture is not really looked at. So this is very common. This happens a lot. And I saw this little cartoon and I thought, yeah, well, that explains that. Good news, your lab results look great. Everything's normal. You're a picture of health. I think we are very familiar with that scenario. So ultimately, the results of that approach is that you're really only getting a cursory understanding of your patient's story, right? Little attention is paid to the patient's story beyond the chief complaint and the history of the present illness. The patient's whole story isn't understood, and their symptoms are sort of dealt in isolation with the others. They're like in these silos where each complaint becomes this discrete issue. And to be honest with you, when years ago, I worked in a primary care's office, and that's how it was. This was done on purpose, right? If a person had multiple complaints, they were actually not allowed to discuss all the multiple complaints at one time. They had to come in for separate visits so that they could be billed separate well, now they're soon to be ICD-10 codes, but at the time ICD-9 codes. So that's just the way it was. We did that on purpose. That's how it was dealt with on purpose. And so naturally, this is a problem because chronic illness is the majority of what's coming into the office. I mean, it's at least 80% of what's coming into the primary care's office, and naturally, if you're a dietitian, it's 100% of what's coming into the nutritionist's office, right? Because the very nature of chronic disease is multifactorial. So an intervention has to be multidimensional or multi-solutional in nature, right? So we really need to this old approach of one molecule, one function for one disease, that might be good for an acute care model, but it's not really sufficient for the chronic disease situation where we really need a new approach because we're dealing with multiple situations, multiple molecules, multiple functions, this orchestra of health, so that we need this systems biology approach. So why a systems biology approach? Well, because, folks, we need a new operating system. We need a new operating system, and the reason we need a new operating system is because chronic disease, as we all know, is a food and lifestyle-driven, environmental and genetics influenced phenomenon. I mean, let's face it, this is not going to be conquered with drugs and surgery alone. It can however, be conquered by integrating what we know about how the human body works with individualized, patient-centered, science-based, evidence-based care that addresses the causes of these complex chronic diseases, which we know are rooted in lifestyle choices, environmental exposures, genetic influences. So do you see what I'm saying? The transformation of the 21st century medicine from this sort of prevailing acute care model, which has its place, to a far more effective chronic disease model will only succeed if we attack the underlying drivers of the epidemic, the complex, lifelong interactions among, again, the lifestyle, environmental, and genetic factors. So I really feel that in order to be successful, we're just going to have to pay much closer attention to these root causes, right? Because naming the disease and then just prescribing drugs or surgery alone, I just don't believe are sufficient strategies. Okay, so I'd like to introduce functional medicine. This term functional medicine was coined in 1993 by the Dr. Jeffrey Bland to describe the medicine of the future, which actually you could say the medicine of today. It's an approach. It's an approach that embraces these core principles, the following core principles that I'm going to show you right now on this screen. So the 7 core principles of functional medicine, and I know we can read this, but I just want to take the time to actually go through each one of these with you. So acknowledging the biochemical individuality of each human being based on concepts of genetic environmental uniquenesses. And, you know, so labs are going to be really important here, and we're going to be talking a lot about functional interpretation of blood chemistries and also functional labs and a lot of IFNA training. Incorporating a patient-centered rather than a disease-centered approach to treatment. So obviously listening to the patient's story, seeking a dynamic balance between those internal and external factors in the patient's mind, body, and spirit. Addressing the web-like interconnections of these internal physiologic factors, and we're actually, in just a few slides from now, we're going to talk about some of those web-like interconnections, so sit tight, I'm going to get there. Identifying health as positive vitality, not just the absence of disease. Wouldn't that be awesome? And emphasizing those factors that encourage a vigorous physiology. And then, of course, promoting organ reserve. What do we mean by organ reserve? Well, I'm referring to the functional capacity of our organs to support life, right? When we're young, our organs have many more times the capacity that it takes to simply function. So promoting organ reserve as a means of enhancing the health span, not just the lifespan of each patient. And then, of course, functional medicine, knowing that functional medicine is absolutely an evidence-based, science-using profession. So then what do we mean by integrative? Okay, well, integrative defined as the integration of multiple modalities of healing and therapies, including at the very top of the list, diet, food, nutrition, right? And certainly the responsible use of supplements, exercise or gentle movement like yoga or qigong, meditation, traditional Chinese medicine or acupuncture, massage, and notice that pharmaceuticals is on the list, so we're not excluding medications whatsoever, but it really needs to have its place as part of an integrative approach. Functional nutrition then focuses on how whole foods and key nutrients modulate health and the process of healing, because nutrition is the cornerstone of functional medicine. And you know, the rest of the healthcare world, the medical world, is starting to figure this out, right? Everybody wants to do nutrition. The chiropractors want to do nutrition. The nurses want to do nutrition. The docs want to do nutrition. Everybody wants to do nutrition because everybody is figuring out that, wow, nutrition really is the foundation of this. It's prevention-oriented and it's therapeutic. And that nutrients and foods are very powerful, multi-targeted biological response modifiers, that they have everything to do with chronic disease, right? Just as an example, I mean, iodine and vitamin D alone, receptors for iodine and vitamin D exist in each of the many trillions of the cells in your body and regulate cellular function. Right? Magnesium alone is involved in something like 2/3 of all the enzymes involved in detoxification. And what about folate? I mean, this is just a short list, but there's so many different conditions related to folate metabolism alone. I mean, we're already very familiar with folate and its relationship and prevention of spina bifida and various neural tube defects, but if you do PubMed searches, you'll see that, wow, folate metabolism is also related to depression, anxiety, OCD, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline, heart disease, stroke, cancer, high blood pressure, detoxification, and the lack of it, methylation, transmethylation, poor energy, and of course we're already familiar with how folate relates to various anemias, particularly macrocytic and megaloblastic anemia. Okay. Just trying to change my slide here. Hang on one second. There we go. Okay, so what you see here is that when the patient is diagnosed with an illness, it's not really the starting point, right? Disease is really just the process that may not even be discovered until maybe even decades after those initial biochemical alterations or perturbations. So the patient's diagnosis is really just the tip of the iceberg. You know, as functional nutrition practitioners, we're really trying to understand the underlying causes. And so we do this by taking a personalized approach, trying to understand the root causes of chronic disease, which is something we're going to get into in a lot of detail in the very beginning of track 1 of our modules at IFNA, reestablishing organ reserve, as I was mentioning earlier, and vitality, and then balancing the essential core areas of health, which begs the question, what are those core areas? Well, here is an illustration of the functional medicine web that was published by the Institute for Functional Medicine several years ago. It is an older version, but really it's my favorite one because to me it's just really clear. I mean, look at how all of these core areas are all interconnected, with genetics being in the backdrop, right? So we see GI status being related to immune status, being related to detoxification, being related to hormones and your neurotransmitters, you know, all these arrows going in all these different directions. So there are many complex interactions, multiple access points, and of course, in the end, diverse effects. They're so interconnected that sometimes these systems are practically one and the same. I think we separate them out for our own ease. So understanding these pathways generates an approach to treatment then that is focused on the individual rather than the disease, and on the restoration of health and function rather than only just managing the symptoms, right? And it's going to be important to know how to identify the various core system imbalances that could be at the root of many of these different conditions, and then vice versa, how one condition can contribute to many different system imbalances. So let's look at this example. So using this construct, it's possible to see that one disease or condition can have multiple causes, just as one fundamental imbalance could be at the root of so many seemingly disparate conditions. So I think the most important precept to remember about functional medicine is that restoring balance is the key to restoring health. Right, so here's an example, say high blood pressure. So naturally a patient can take a medication that will morph his or her enzyme system like renin so that blood pressure comes down. And that's fine. And we're not saying that our patients should not be on blood pressure medication. But we as nutrition professionals can also improve the integrity of our patients' vascular health with a functional nutrition approach so that vasodilation and vasoconstriction renormalizes and blood pressure starts to autocorrect. So take a look at this slide, the continuum of pathology. You know, Dr. Jeff Bland, who I mentioned earlier, who coined that term functional medicine, he once said, and I quote him, "The loss of function precedes the onset of disease. Disease does not come as a bump in the night. It comes as a consequence of declining function over time." You know, and what he said, it really resonated with me because it helped me to understand this concept of the continuum of pathology. So as you can see, these things start with these biochemical alterations initially, and your patient really may not have any symptoms. There's something just sort of brewing under the radar. And then over time, you know, we have some more significant impaired cellular function, and now they may have some subclinical manifestation of their disease, or they may not. With no intervention, we see now functional changes, morphological changes, right? Early stage disease. That might be, say, prediabetes, which according to this continuum is already 3/4 of the way there. And then ultimately, with no intervention, you know, we have full-blown diagnosed pathology. We've got tissue damage, we've got organ failure, and that's where medicine is actually intervening right now. We don't really see a lot of practitioners starting at the other end of the continuum. Now, what's nice is that if you've got functional labs, which we're going to be talking a lot about in our module training, those kinds of labs, the interpretation of that lab data helps to identify earlier changes, though it helps you identify those biochemical changes and alterations much earlier in the process, which is wonderful because it's a lot easier and a lot less expensive to make changes earlier in the process. So now that we've identified that there is a continuum with health and disease, let me kind of get into it in a little bit more detail. So we start with health. And let's say you start with a patient that's starting to now complain of feeling a little fatigued and achy, and with no intervention, it's now progressing to insufficiency and deficiency, right? So we have fatigue and achiness, and now it's more than just fatigue. Now the patient is complaining of pain, migraines, they're complaining that they're cold a lot, maybe there's some weight gain, maybe they're complaining of some irritable bowel symptoms. Maybe you check their fasting blood sugar and it's not really abnormal, but it's awfully high. It's, you know, 97, 98, 99, you know, they're right there on the cusp, you know, and we're sort of just asking them, all right, well, you know, we'll keep an eye on it and we'll check again or talk again in 6 months. This is something this is very common, that approach. Now they're coming in, and now boom, they've got you know, high TSH. Their homocysteine is elevated if they should be so fortunate to have that checked. Their vitamin D levels may be tanked. Their HDL levels might be awfully low. And if they happen to be working with a functional medicine practitioner, maybe they have something called methylmalonic acid checked, or MMA, which is a functional biomarker for vitamin B12. Or they have their FIGLU checked, that stands for form immunoglutamate. That's a functional biomarker for folic acid. And you know, these days, more and more patients are walking in with genetic data, right? Many patients are having MTHFR, or methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, being tested. And genetics, it's huge. And we as nutrition professionals, we really have to know how to have a feel of the basics of how to interpret these labs, how to understand, how to at least begin to understand what it means to be, normal, which is called wild type, or what does it mean to have a low penetrant gene? What does it mean to be heterozygous? What does it mean to be homozygous for this variant or for that variant? How to look for pattern analysis, right? These are going to be really important skills and concepts that we need to know because, again, folks, more and more patients are having these tests done and are turning to us for interpretation and guidance. And so obviously at the other end of the continuum, you have, again, full-blown diagnosis of hypothyroid or fibromyalgia or whatever the case may be. And one more example just to really drive this point. Let's talk about insulin resistance. Insulin resistance can exist on a continuum, right? So you might start with a patient that has high insulin, but their blood sugar might be normal. It might be 95, and we're looking at that as normal. And what's happening is that their insulin levels in their blood, now not their blood sugar, but their insulin level is elevated. And this is that person that's coming in that's complaining of weight gain. I'm feeling very hungry, and you're checking their blood sugar, everything's normal. But if you were to check their fasting insulin level, you would see that it's entirely possible that their insulin level could be very high, and we call that compensated hyperinsulinemia. And so with no intervention, again, they're just those alterations will just continue to progress, and then all of a sudden now they have prediabetes, right? They have high insulin and they have high blood sugar. And again, with no real good intervention, we see that at least in the United States, something like 26.1 million people have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes.
Suggest you download the app because I bet you can and click on one stop.
Okay, so in our training modules, right from the get-go, we're going to show you how one size fits all. This one size fits all approach is really out, and this lifestyle medicine approach now, this is really in. We're going to show you how to assess your patients from a functional medicine perspective, because managing this approach, there's a lot of complexity that's just inherent to this approach. Your patients are going to come to you with a lot of information, and one of the things that we're going to be showing you at the IFNA training is how to take all this information and organize it in a cohesive manner. So one thing you can do for now is you can start with this very simple approach, which I really think of as a hammer in my toolkit, and that's to ask these two key questions when assessing your patients. And that first question would be, one, what does this person require? What do they need to get in to improve function in order to support health and healing? Do they need a therapeutic or prescriptive diet? Do they need supplemental nutrients? Do we need to address other areas such as stress management? Do we need to make sure they're getting restorative sleep? Are they getting plenty of light, love? Right? And we don't necessarily have to do it all. I mean, certainly we can collaborate with other healthcare professionals to assist us in this process. But also the other part of the equation, which is what does this person need to remove? What needs to come out in order to improve function, to support health and healing? Does stress need to come out? Do we need to address toxins? What toxins? Okay, well, there are more than just cigarette smoke and lead poisoning that's out there. There are many different types of toxins that could potentially be a problem, things that are causing oxidative damage, medications that are problematic. Could it be allergens, food sensitivities, food intolerances, infection? My goodness, that's huge, right? You can have two people that come in both with GI issues, and for one person, it could be simply just a nutritional issue, just need to get more fiber in their diet, or maybe they just need to clean up their diet. And for another person, it can be infection. So we have to be able to figure these things out. And all of these things leading to, of course, inflammation, and then in more severe cases, an abnormal immune response, which of course I'm talking about autoimmunity, right? So what we see that when you go through this process, what we see that there's really no one diet that's right for every person. In fact, when people call my office and ask about the program, there really is, what we tell them is there really is no one program, that everybody kind of gets their own unique, special program. So this slide looks kind of busy, but it's really one of my favorite slides that illustrates that immune response to antigens that I was just kind of alluding to. So for example, take a patient that comes to you with a complaint of IBS or a thyroid issue and fatigue and these sorts of things, right? So what you're looking at here is a cartoon illustration of the gut epithelia, right, with the gap junctions there. And you see the little villi there, the little finger-like projections, and you see those gap junctions that are not supposed to be cemented together, but they should be pretty snug and tight, right? But triggers like stress, like chemical injury from medications or toxins or even endotoxins and their lipopolysaccharide or LPS fragments, right? Infections, pathogens, altered dietary proteins like gliadin, or what about foreign proteins from genetically modified organisms, right? GMO. All of these things, they start to wear away at the integrity of the gut epithelia, and those gap junctions start to wiggle open. What we're talking about, folks, here is intestinal permeability, which is also known as leaky gut. So leaky gut starts to develop, and all those substances that I just described, they provoke this very powerful immune reaction. Now, on the other side, we have our immune cells, right? So, for example, those dendritic cells there, they're there to sort of sample what's out there, and they get awfully alerted by all of these antigenic substances, and then they present it over to the CD4 cells. Houston, we have a problem, right? So the CD4 cells in turn start making T cells that are going to produce hundreds of these pro-inflammatory cytokines and proteins. And you've probably heard of these terms, TNF-alpha, interleukins, interferons, that are causing all of this inflammation and then in turn causing even more damage in the body. Actually, it's your body's effort to protect you, but that's not it. Then those CD4 cells are also going to make B cells, especially if there's genetic predisposition to autoimmunity, and those B cells start making antibodies like crazy. And that, where they make them, okay, where your body makes antibodies really depends on the patient's genetics, right? So in some people, you're going to have antibodies against the thyroid. In other people, that same mechanism can provoke antibodies made against the joints, and that's rheumatoid arthritis. And you can even make antibodies against the brain. I think it's important to note, though, that it can take a long time to develop symptoms, but the antibody production, that can actually begin way ahead of time. There's data published in the New England Journal of Medicine that antibodies can start being created up to 6, 7, 8 years ahead of time before your patient's even symptomatic. Now, there are labs that you can run to check for those antibodies, but the process has begun on that continuum that we were talking about. So what do you do for that IBS patient, right? How do we approach it? Well, in IFNA training, there's all sorts of protocols, but just as a starting point, whatever you do need a coherent and organized approach, right? And so one thing that you can do to kind of get started in a methodical way, because if you're not methodical about it, you're going to be sitting there with your patient for like 3 hours, right? So you have to be organized. You have to really know what you're doing. You have to have the right training. You got to be methodical, and like I said, we will be giving you protocols and tools that you're going to love. But a basic hammer, again, I'm calling it the hammer in my toolkit, might be just to start with what needs to come out and what needs to go in, right? So again, what should we eliminate? What were those things that were perturbing the lining of the epithelia? Could it be gluten? Could it be dairy? Could it be corn or soy or grains or animal protein? And there's so many different ways to go about figuring all this out, right? Should we be removing refined sugar? Well, naturally, that's always a good thing. But could it be infection? Could there be some toxins that are damaging the gut lining, causing this leaky gut? Do we need to manage stress? And again, what do we need to add? Well, maybe we need to add some betaine hydrochloric acid. I mean, think about how many people are actually on antacids, PPI medications that are, really have only been approved by the FDA for 12 weeks. Yet we know our patients have been potentially on PPIs for decades. What happens to a biologic system when you haven't been producing stomach acid for decades? What do you think is going to be happening with absorption? So we have to try to get people to produce stomach acid for absorption. Maybe they need some digestive enzymes to help break down some of their foods because there's all this bloating going on. Maybe they need a probiotic, maybe they don't, right? And that's one of the things we'll be sharing with you is when you need a probiotic and when probiotics are not a good idea. When do you need a prebiotic? Should we be introducing fermented foods? Maybe we shouldn't. There's a time and a place for all of that. Should we be doing glutamine for intestinal permeability? Some people can tolerate it, some people don't. We'll learn about that. Should we be offering methylated nutrients, methylfolate, methyl B12, the active version of vitamin B6, which is P5P? Should we be recommending omega-3 fish oils? And if so, what dosing? What kind of omega-3 fish oils? Should we, what kind of fiber-rich foods? Recommending phytochemical-rich foods, whole foods, foods with lots of antioxidants and these sorts of things. So this is just sort of like one way of approaching the situation. So what you're looking at here is basically the different components of the training and mentoring program in IFNA. We are certainly going to be sharing many different kinds of protocols, teaching about the responsible use of supplements. In fact, we have several modules that are dedicated just to supplements, and then each module has part of the component of each module includes a little bit about supplements. So we'll get a lot on that. We have a whole track dedicated to therapeutic elimination diets, which I'm really excited about. Several tracks dedicated to understanding the use of conventional and functional labs, but then again, like supplements, the different modules also have a component where we discuss the lab that's germane to that particular condition. And then each module also includes a mind-body practice, which I'm really excited about. Here is the IFMNT radial that some of you may have seen or heard of, the Integrative and Functional Medical Nutrition Therapy radial. By the way, I'm really proud to say that it was Kathy Swift that took the lead on developing the IFMNT radial back in 2011. So you see in the center of the radial personalized nutrition care, right, and the ADIME. We're familiar with that. A for assessment, D for diagnosis, I for intervention, M for monitoring, E for evaluation. And this radial depicts that personalized nutrition care, and the nutrition care process is essentially influenced by these 5 key areas. So lifestyle, which obviously includes food and nutrition, and then systems, that's your signs and symptoms, the core imbalances, metabolic pathways and networks, and of course biomarkers, those are your labs and things like that. And then surrounding the radial are those precipitating factors and also the patient's unique genetics that affect the individual. We're going to be using several clinical tools that you can sort of pick and choose which ones you like, which ones work for you to help assist us with this decision-making process, because again, you're going to have to learn how to get thorough, how to get organized, how to prioritize information so that it helps to clarify where you need to investigate a little deeper. You may or may not be interested to know what the position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is on IFN here in the United States. Just very briefly, they actually list integrative and functional medical centers as an entry-level job setting for the RDN. I think that's very interesting, so we certainly need to get that information out there. They also list key entry-level skills for the RDN and being able to apply integrative nutrition principles to the nutrition care process, including, as you can see, the use of nutritional genomics, dietary supplements, and even herbal remedies. So, key points: the functional medicine nutritionist takes the time to listen to the patient's story, recognizes that health and disease exist on a continuum, and hopefully we're going to be trying to intervene as early on that continuum as possible. draws connections between core areas of imbalance and then looks for those root causes. And we spent quite a bit of time in IFNA training talking about that in a lot of detail, trying to help you understand that process. Collaborates with other integrative and functional medicine, nutrition, healthcare providers because we cannot do it all. And then assesses our knowledge and seeks additional training as needed in a systematic manner. And so we here at IFNA are planning on making sure that we cover all of these key points and really so much more. So why might you be interested in taking a look at what we are offering in terms of training? Well, suffice it to say, we've had a tremendous amount of interest in the credential, the IFNCP credential, and you can learn a lot more about that on the website. And for those of you who are not interested in a credential, you know, we do offer CEUs. Of course, these CEUs are approved by the American Commission on Dietetic Registration. Also, there is a certificate of training awarded when you successfully complete tracks 1, 2, and 3, and then the credential is awarded if you complete the entire program and pass that, successfully pass that board exam. And again, we are an accredited provider here in the United States by our Commission on Dietetic Registration. So basically, we have an online learning management system that you matriculate through that I actually built for IFNA and customized it. And so when you click, let's say, on track 1, basically you're taken to the course shell where you can see all of these areas, and you'll see their announcements and the syllabus and the various modules. And when you click on the module, then you'll see this for each module, the course description, the learning objectives, and all the little circles there on the side. That's actually a progress bar that lights up and tells you exactly where you left off in case you didn't finish in one setting. So we have pre-webinar reading materials and resources that you can take a look at to kind of prime you for the actual webinar, and everything is recorded and then uploaded into the course shell. Then every corresponding Thursday we also have a separate Q&A, 1-hour Q&A just dedicated to questions for the speaker that's also recorded and then uploaded in case you miss anything. So if you miss anything, it's okay, it's all there, no worries. The PowerPoint gets uploaded so you can download it and it's yours to keep. Our amazing clinical toolkit, which I think you guys will go nuts for. The mind-body practice is also there. And then, of course, the additional resources is this wonderful list of tools and resources that I think you'll find very helpful, papers, websites that I think you'll find very helpful to enhance your learning. And then, of course, we have these 5 quiz questions at the end of each module that are really just designed to make sure everybody's sort of on the same page. Just briefly wanted to mention that rather than having Kathy or me speak on every subject, we really wanted to have a diverse group of interdisciplinary experts leading the webinars, what I like to call our all-star cast, offering you the most cutting-edge information so that you have the benefit of a variety of perspectives, but also a flowing and cohesive program, again, rather than hearing it from the same person over and over again. So let me go ahead and sorry, I skipped a slide. This slide you can see on our website if you're interested in knowing the subjects that we're going to be covering. This is available on the website. If you want a more detailed syllabus, our registrants, once they register for the program, will receive a much more detailed syllabus. And I wanted to just bring to your attention the therapeutic diets track. There are 5 different modules, and we go over all sorts of different aspects of therapeutic diets. And of course, I'm very happy to say our own Kathy Swift is going to be presenting part 3 of that particular track. We have not only 1 but 4 amazing culinary experts. That is what I like to call our dream team to lead you through this amazing culinary immersion experience coming up in April of 2016. So be sure to check our website for more details on that. We've already got our location secured in the beautiful Berkshires of Massachusetts, and actually I have some nice specials to offer you at the end of this webinar in just another minute or two. The schedule is posted on the on the website, so be sure to check that so you have all the details of the dates and so on and so forth. And also, as a thank you for being on with us today, we wanted to offer you a free gift. If you go to our website, you can enter your name and your email and download Kathy Swift's free ebook, her third edition of the My Foundation Diet, a whole foods, gluten, and dairy-free 2-week elimination diet plan, yours to keep. So I want to thank you for your attention, and again, I want to share with you a couple of webinar specials. We actually have not one, not two, but 3 specials for you today, and I'll go over them with you very quickly, and you'll have this webinar recorded. But if you register for our Track 1, this offer is exclusive just for this group only. You can get 10%, an additional 10% off of Track 2. The deadline is Monday, September 28th by 5 o'clock Eastern. So let me just flesh that out. Regular registration for Track 2 is $13.49. Early bird registration for Track 2 is $12.49. If you buy an IFNA membership, you get 10% off Track 2, and now the price is dropped to $11.24. But with this special, we are now dropping another 10%, right? So that is a $338 savings. The price drops to just a little over $1,000. So if you're interested, I would definitely take advantage of this. The deadline will stop Monday, September 28th by 5 o'clock Eastern. Okay. And our second special is if you register for the Therapeutic Diets Track by Monday the 28th, you're going to get another 10% off early bird rates. So again, you're getting 10% off if you're an IFNA member, but an additional 10% off. So it's practically 20%. If you register for the Culinary Therapeutic Immersion by Monday the 28th, you'll get another 10% off early bird rates. Okay, so again, if you're already an IFNA member and you haven't registered yet, you'll get the 10% off for being a member and another 10% off for registering for these programs by Monday the 28th by 5 o'clock Eastern. Okay, so just in terms of pricing, that's a significant savings. Okay, so let's see, I think, okay, so this slide is basically just showing you what where the registration page is. You'd go there and just sort of click on where it says IFNA registration. And if you still have questions, folks, today, I know we're going to take a couple of questions in a minute or two. You can go to the website and you can click on contact, and you can feel free to email us any of your questions. So please feel free to take advantage of that. So I want to thank you for your attention today. I think I took up quite a bit of time. I'm going to stop now and you know, stick around for some questions. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sheila. Doug, are you there? Are you going to moderate the questions, or would you like me to? Sheila, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kathy.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead. Thank you so much. I think it really is life-changing, and it really can transform our. And I can't see it now because it just disappeared, but I think it was from Catherine, who really asked about how, you know, that some of this information is like some things that she reads online and not sure about the credibility. How can she really learn the science behind this? And I'll toss it over to you. I have my own thoughts, but go ahead and we'll put Catherine at ease.
You know, there's a couple of ways of going about that. Thank you for that question. I think it's a fair question. It's an important question. I myself, when I heard a lot of information that I wasn't sure about its credibility, I basically went to the source. So naturally, if you hear information, you want to go to the source, and I became a PubMed junkie. I mean, I would go to PubMed and I would start looking stuff up, and to my really pleasant surprise, I would find a lot of this information there documented in PubMed. Now, because that's such a huge, vast database, one of the nice things about a training program is that it helps pull it together to synthesize all of this information. Otherwise, when you're on your own, it's very difficult. I mean, you're going to get information all over the place. So that would be my answer to that.
Yes, and I'm just going to give an example. Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, and in our course shell, as Sheila indicated, we have additional readings, and in fact, in the very first module, I am going to present some papers that you'll have on what is real evidence-based medicine. I think having these resources are very important. Just this morning on our IFNA listserv, a question came up about the blood type diet, and as Sheila mentioned, what do we do? Well, we're certainly going to go into the National Library of Medicine, and there was some research there with respect to the blood type diet. I'll let you explore it, but other examples, you bet, whether we're talking specific carbohydrate diet, we're staying up on the latest article presented in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the use of that in inflammatory bowel disease. So, but one thing we really want to appreciate is certainly looking into the research first and foremost, but also building this community of integrative and functional nutrition practitioners who value the science, who use the science, and we share and discuss these things. That's really practice-informed evidence, wisdom, clinical evidence also. And another part of Catherine's question was, and how can I help the RDs and other healthcare providers that you work with shift their thinking towards being more accepting of integrative and functional nutrition and functional medicine? You know, I'm just going to say I had this experience myself. I'll share very, very quickly. And my on-ramp to this was I was suffering from a chronic illness. And at the time, way back then in the 80s, we didn't have Google, we didn't have Wikipedia. It was a very, very slow exploratory process that somehow I came across, you know, the research of Dr. Bland, Dr. Sid Baker, and other pioneers in this. And I think that and when I came back to the States, I was living in the UK at the time, I was actually hired at a premier lifestyle resort. And the medical department wasn't doing so well, and I convinced the CEO that we really needed to think about a different way to do medicine, and that was through nutrition, because functional medicine originally was called nutritional medicine, interestingly. And he, you know, more or less said, okay, then start educating, and little by little by little, and I'm sharing this with you because it did require some persistence, some determination. It required, I brought in other presenters, and it was a process, it was a journey, but it can be done. And I also would encourage any of you, as you learn these skills and competencies, to, you know, even share it with your colleagues. Start a meetup group, a local. We have one here where I live in Massachusetts, and we talk about whether it's something in the research or a challenge with our patients. So it's, yeah, it definitely is something that I think you'll enjoy, and one of the reasons Sheila and I are building this network of practitioners, so that we support each other, we share with each other, and we really savor the science and the skills in this area.
Thank you,
Can everyone
Kathy.
hear me now?
Hey,
Yeah.
Doug.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. This is my first webinar. It's been a rough go for me, but I can speak to it from a Canadian perspective. So what got me into this, like you said, I dove into the research myself. I started basically looking at people who are involved in this program. There is a question as to whether or not the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy certification is recognized in Canada. It would not be at this time, but what's valuable about these kinds of courses is it's going to give you a lot of the groundwork and the information. You obviously always have to check with your respective colleges about where those professional boundaries are and where the scope of practice lies. but there's going to be a lot more than you realize. But of course, you have to check with your college. And in terms of disseminating, you know, we have this network at DC. If you're not a member, it's a great opportunity to join that. We've had some presentations at the DC national conferences, and we're going to keep building on that. Startup groups or a meeting of like minds is a great idea, as Kathy was saying. So, and in terms of turning the tide, it really is just communicating, educating, of course, as a foundation of evidence-based research and practice guidelines and anything else that you can find. It is going to be a bit of a slow turn, but it's the way to go, because as we know, there's other people embracing the kind of nutritional concepts, as Sheila said, and I think dietitians are really poised to embrace it and take it by the reins, because we do have that solid education and training.
Thanks, Doug. And I would just add that, you know, for me in my journey, you know, we're awfully traditional. I was an awfully traditionally trained dietitian, so I mean, it took me a while to really sort of embrace this, because the last thing I wanted to do was, you know, after all of this training, I really wanted something that was very scientifically based, especially if I was going to be discussing this with my colleagues, and you know, you just want to feel really confident about that. So two things. One, it was really nice to see the papers and then to see the biochemistry behind it. But even that, I felt like, okay, well, this is all really good. Like, for example, that slide that I showed you on gut epithelium and how autoimmunity, the process starts. But then the bottom line was, okay, so does it really work? I can understand what you're saying about the physiology and the pathophysiology and the biochemistry, but then if I implement these suggestions, like you're saying, does it really work? I mean, that is the bottom line, because ultimately our patients just want to get better. And when I implemented it, it worked. And so I felt like, okay, for me, I was good. I saw the science, I saw the biochemistry, I saw the pathophysiology in the papers, I implemented it, it worked, I was able to repeat it, and it worked multiple times. You know, for me personally, at that point, I was okay with all of it.
Great.
Yeah, and I think another example is, you know, just even a few years ago, if we were to go into PubMed and plug in leaky gut, or if you were to speak at a medical conference on leaky gut, I mean, it was heretical, you know. So whereas now there's many, many papers, paradigms in medicine take a while to shift, and I think, you know, one seminal paper is an example of this shifting paradigm is by, you know, Stephen Bischoff, called Gut Health, a New Objective in Medicine. And so these are the types of papers that we really will be, you know, presenting, and to show the deep, rich science, but also, I think, as Sheila mentioned, you know, the clinical application of these concepts that really can, as we say, you know, transform our patients' lives and reduce suffering.
Kathy, sorry to interrupt. We have 4 more questions to field. If you can attend to them, time is advancing.
Okay, all right. Oh, I see them now. Yes, handouts will be available. For this presentation, yes, you will have copies of the slides. The next question, oops, we've got that one. Has the webinar started?
The first question is from Leela Shah, towards the bottom.
Okay, I don't see that one. Can you? Okay,
I will read it for you.
Are you getting? The question is, and I'm going to toss this to Sheila, are you getting any resistance commentary from naturopathic, great questions, doctors, as this IFNA training and approach seems to be very similar? I have thoughts, but I'll let you go first, Sheila.
Wait, the question is, are we getting resistance from naturopathic physicians?
Yeah.
No, no, not at all. No, there is an amazing spirit and air of cooperation and collaboration. That's my opinion that I've been experiencing. I've been very pleasantly surprised to see how warmly we've been received by people of all backgrounds, chiropractors, naturopaths, nurses. We are primarily marketing to dietitians. We're really focusing on dietitians, but no, it has not been my experience to get much pushback from the naturopath.
In fact, we do have two amazing naturopaths on our faculty. One who will be speaking, addressing oncology, and Kara Fitzgerald, another who in the first track will be addressing functional labs. So, and you know, this is really the heart of our training. We really want to extend a spirit and have a spirit of collaboration. I think, you know, these turf and areas and boundaries, you know, we have a sick nation here in the U.S. Sheila went through some of the statistics on chronic disease. Globally, we know that mental health disorders are the #1 reason for disability. So we all need to appreciate and truly offer our services in a multidisciplinary way. So that's our philosophy anyway. Here's another one. As an integrative and functional nutrition, is this service reimbursed by insurance companies, including Medicare, in the U.S.? Do you want to take that, Sheila, and explain how
Yep.
you...
Mm-hmm. A lot of this depends on how you have a practice set up. If you're a solo practitioner, you're going to have a more, and at least in my experience in the U.S., my experience is really, I should say, in the state of Florida, as a solo practitioner, you'll have a more difficult time getting your services reimbursed. If you're working with a physician, then you'll probably be able to get some type of reimbursement when there's a physician on board as a medical director. So it depends on the scenario of your practice. It depends on how things are coded. And I would say that the labs oftentimes are here in the United States covered by insurance. Even some of the functional panels, it depends on what lab company you're working with. And so I'm sorry that I don't have a straightforward answer. I think, unfortunately, it just sort of depends. It depends on the company you're working with, and it depends on how you have your private practice set up. I personally do not take insurance, mostly because that requires a whole nother person just for billing. And so people are very much aware that insurance, that if they would like to get my service covered under insurance, that really falls, the responsibility of that falls on their shoulders, but they are walking in knowing that and paying for the service up front.
Thank you. Doug, do you see any other questions? I don't.
No, I think we've covered all the main ones here. Yeah.
The email is info@ifnacademy.com. It's probably better actually to go to the website and just go to the Contact Us page, because we'll definitely get it if you go there, and feel free to send us any questions that you might have.
Great. Well, we're actually over, and we had a lot of people hanging on, which is great, but I wanted to say a huge thank you to Kathy and Sheila for taking the time out of their busy schedules to present on this topic. It is a hot topic. There's huge interest, and we're very lucky to have you because you are well known in this field. So on behalf of everybody who attended and who will get the recording, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you all.
Welcome. And at that, I guess we'll end it. So thanks again.
Yes.